very closest friends. So we appreciate that. But I would be a little remiss, I think, not to mention all those people who have been responsible to help us have the kind of organization, the kind of program from a team standpoint at the University of Alabama. And I always think it starts at the top with our administration. Dr. Witt has done a fabulous job with our institution, the growth of our institution, the quality of our institution, in support of the athletic program. Now, Jude Bonner, our president, has certainly continued, that tradition with us. Al Moore, who had tremendous vision for what could be accomplished at the University of Alabama, set the table for us many years before we ever got there. And now Bill Dattle providing very strong leadership in our athletic department, all the people who work so hard to help us be successful, and the coaches and the players who have made a commitment to a standard to be able to accomplish some of the things that we've been able to accomplish in the past few years, as well as our fans who have tremendous passion for the University of Alabama and our program, and they certainly make it very special to be the head coach at the University of Alabama. So, there's only one way, I think, that we would ever like to try to have a program in college football, and that's to create an atmosphere and environment where our players are going to have a better opportunity to be successful in life because they were involved in the program. And I think that personal development programs, how they need mental conditioning for success, behavioral issues, all these things are things that we try to invest in so that our players represent themselves, their families, and our institution in a first-class way. Our players are there to develop a career off the field, number one, which means we want to have a great academic support program so that they have an opportunity to graduate. And we have a pretty positive history of success when it comes to academics at the University of Alabama in terms of graduation rate, APR, and all those types of things. So we want to help them develop football players that can actually represent our institution and be a source of pride in the way that they play, they compete, and represent all the people who are a part of the tradition and have been a part of the tradition at the University of Alabama in the past. And we're all very much committed to helping our players be successful in the future. It's a challenge each year to reinvent your team. You always lose good players. You always lose about 25% of your team in college. So it creates new opportunities for other players who may not have the same experience. It also creates new roles for players who have been a part of the team, but now maybe have to assume a little different role. And how each and every one of these players sort of accept those roles and those challenges, and the attitude that they have toward focusing on the things that they need to do to make a significant contribution to the team in all those roles has a lot to do with how that team is going to develop. We're obviously proud of what our team was able to accomplish last year and the year before, but we also learned that there's 5 or 6 plays that sort of can define your season and make a difference in the season. I can go back to last year and say the 2-minute drive at LSU, not scoring on 4th and 2 against A&M, Georgia blocking the field goal in the SEC championship game and getting up 21-10. Fundamentally, we didn't execute in some of those circumstances. Some of them we did, and we benefited from it. 2 or 3 plays can affect the outcome of a game. So your players' commitment to a standard of excellence, to be prepared, to have the passion toward the commitment and the standard, to be prepared, to give the effort, play with the kind of toughness, have the discipline to execute. Every play in a game like it has a history and life of its own is very, very important because you never know when those plays are coming up, so you really have to play every play. And that's what we're trying to get our players to buy into, so they're going to put themselves in the best position to have a chance to make those plays in what most certainly be a very competitive season and some very challenging games against some great football teams. And I know, and I read and I hear, how you all make predictions, and what's going to happen in the season. And, because of these things that I talk about, it seems almost a little bit crazy to try to predict, what's going to happen in the season. And I'd also like to make a note here that, in the last 21 seasons, you as the media have only picked the right team 4 times in the SEC. Now, if I was 4-17, I would be back in West Virginia pumping my gas at my dad's gas station, which we don't really want to go there. But I just think it's crazy to speculate, because of the fact that each year you have a different type of team. This year, our team probably has a little better skill players than offense. We have a very experienced quarterback who has done a wonderful job in developing and improving every year and continues to do that. He's become a very good leader on our team, A.J. McCarron. We have some questions about the development of the offensive line, but that seems to go very well, and we have some very good skill players at wide receiver who have been very productive. So we may have a little different type of team. I think it's important that we continue to progress and improve on defense, because there were times last year when we didn't play as well as what I think we need to play against some very good offensive teams. Can do the same thing on special teams. So this team has been a work in progress. We started out with maybe some question marks in how we approach the off season. We're a little sloppy in spring practice, kind of had a sloppy spring game. Turned the ball over a lot, didn't play with kind of discipline to execute that I'd like for our team to play. But that was a good learning opportunity for our players, to see that when you don't do things exactly right, when you don't prepare exactly right, things don't always work out exactly right. So it's important to do the right thing, the right way, the right time, all the time. And to have the leadership on your team, to set a good example for others is really important to being successful. Be someone that somebody else wants to emulate. Be willing to provide the guidance for someone who doesn't have the same experience, and to inspire someone who maybe doesn't have the same attitude. So those things are critical to have the kind of team chemistry that you need to be successful, to stay focused on the vision of what you want to accomplish, to get everybody to be responsible to do their job on a consistent basis, and put the kind of work and invest your time in it that it takes to bring all those things together, and the commitment that every individual has to make that team what it is. So, with that, that's the challenge that we have for this season. Obviously, we start out with a very difficult opening schedule. Virginia Tech has been a 10-win team almost every year, and that's going to be a very challenging game for us to open with in Atlanta, and then to go play the team that beat us last year, Texas A&M, on the road in the second game of the season. Obviously going to be very challenging, not to overlook the rest of the competition in our division, as well as in our league. So that's what we're sort of focusing on, and what we're looking forward to, and certainly appreciate the challenges, and have a tremendous amount of respect for the competition in the SEC.
Thank you, Coach. If you have a question, raise your hand. We will get a microphone to you. We'll start right here in the front center. Coach.
Coach Saban, ever since you've come to Alabama, you've always had that particular veteran leadership at the linebacker spot, and all the way back from Darren Mustin in your first year through Ron McClain, Dante Hightower, Courtney Upshaw. With C.J. Mosley coming back for his senior year, how big is that for the implementation of that leadership that you just spoke of at the linebacker spot?
Well, I think that we have been extremely fortunate. I think one of the concerns on our team this year And C.J. Mosley is a fantastic player and has made a tremendous amount of plays and had a very good spring, and we're hopeful that he'll have an outstanding season. But that is one of the concerns is who will step up on the defensive side of the field and provide the leadership. I think that if a guy is a good player, that certainly puts him in a position where his teammates respect him, so he can be a leader. But just because you're a good player doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be a good leader. CJ has certainly tried to take the bull by the horns and be a good leader for our team. But I think that's going to be very critical. How do the players respond and come together on defense with leadership?
Coach, we'll go down here to Ron.
Ron Higgins, Commercial Field Memphis. Nick, other than a rule change, how can you get better at defending no-huddle offenses?
Well, I think preparation is really an important part of that. I mean, when people play fast, I think it takes defensive players out of the rhythm a little bit. So I think we obviously need to practice, that way more often. I think you have to adjust your system. So there's not a lot of terminology. As you have quick calls that can get in the game quickly, players can get lined up, get focused on what they need to do to execute. I think that last year just about everybody went no-huddle against us, and I think we actually got better as the year went on in defending it. But I think it's one of the goals in the off-season that we need to practice and spend more time with our players so they have a better chance to adapt to it.
We're going to go over here on the right side.
Nick, what's your view on a rule change for a protective window against up-tempo? And how much can a guy like Tyler Siskey help you with the nuances of an offense of a good division rival at Ole Miss?
I didn't get the first part of your question.
What kind of rule change would you like to see for a protective window for the defense against an up-tempo offense?
Well, I think that what we've tried to do this year is the rules are clearly defined, and we know exactly what to expect in terms of what we have to play against, and we are focused on trying to prepare our team to play against that. And I don't know that there will ever be any rule changes that affect the up-tempo team. There's only two questions that I've ever had. You've heard me talk about this before, and I'm not going to speak on it now. I don't have the answers to these questions. Should we allow football to be a continuous game? Is that the way the game was designed to play? And the second part of it is, I don't have the answer to this, is an increased number of plays that players play in the game. Is there any safety issues in that? They play like 64 plays a game in the NFL. We play over 80 in college. The up-tempo teams play even more than that. Well, the cumulative effect of that is the players playing 25, 30 more plays a game. Is there any safety issues in that? I don't know the answers. I think these are the questions that need to be asked to know whether there needs to be any rules that affect the tempo of the game.
What about Tyler?
Excuse me?
Can hiring a guy like Tyler help you understand the nuances of a up-tempo offense?
Not really. I mean, we played against it enough that, Tyler is very good at what he does. He's a recruiting part of our organization. I'm sure he'd be a fine coach if he ever chose and had an opportunity to do that. But that's not the reason that we hired him. I think we understand what the other team's doing. It's pretty much trying to get our players to be prepared so that they can play well against it.
Coach, we'll go over here on the left side in the middle.
Coach, you've won 4 national titles now. A lot of people are starting to compare you with Barry Bryant. What does that mean that you can be compared to that name?
I don't think I have any reason that anybody should do that. I mean, I think Barry Bryant is probably the greatest coach, ever in college football in terms of what he's accomplished, what his legacy is. I think the biggest thing that impacts me is how many people lives he affected in a positive way, players that played for him, because they all come back and say how he affected their life. They don't come back and say, for what he accomplished, and there's no way that we have done anything close to what he's done in terms of his consistency over time, how he changed what he did to impact the times. They threw the ball in one, they ran a wishbone in one, he changed tremendously to do what he needed to do to be successful. And I don't think that it would be fair that anyone would really be compared to what he was able to accomplish, the way he did it, and how he impacted other people.
Coach, we'll go here to the right.
Coach Saban, Jerry Clark, Alabama Magazine, understand all of your recruiting class is enrolled in some school except for one guy. I was wondering if you have any new information about the status of Robert Foster.
Well, we feel like Robert was by the clearinghouse, the eligibility committee did not accept one of his classes. They gave him an opportunity to repeat the class. That's what he's in the process of doing. If he repeats the class successfully, he'll be there in the fall.
Okay, we'll go down the front. Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. No, you're not in charge of scheduling, but do you at least understand where Les Miles is coming from when he talks about equal paths to the championship in regard to scheduling on the east side?
Yeah, but there can never be an equal path to the championship because unless everybody plays everybody, that's the only equal path to the championship. Everybody doesn't play everybody in the NFL. You rotate your schedule. We have to rotate the schedule. The things that I think are important in the schedule is and I've been over this before, every player plays every team in the SEC in his career. That means you must play at least 2 teams on the other side. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the traditions that our fans enjoy, which our Tennessee game is a big game for our fans. So, only way to do that is play 9 games. So, if somebody else doesn't have that, I understand where Les Miles is coming from. I coached at LSU. We played Florida every year too. So if anybody understands it, I understand it. You understand? All right, so they may not have that same tradition. My question is do other coaches understand our circumstance? Do they understand Auburn, Georgia circumstance? Do they understand, the other teams in our league that do have, rivalries that are cherished by the fans?
Okay, we'll go to the back. Coach.
Chad Scott, 1010XL Radio in Jacksonville. Your team has played in a number of season-opening kickoff games like you are this year against Virginia Tech in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Moving forward with the new college football playoff, how important do you see these types of games being?
Well, I think that these types of games make our scheduling a little more convenient is not the right word, but it's very difficult for us to schedule home games with other conferences and other teams. And I think these neutral site games from a business standpoint work out. It's great for the exposure to the program, to play in different places in the country, especially against a good opponent. And I do think that with strengths of schedule being an important part of the new formula for the playoff in terms of who gets selected to play in the game, strength of schedule is going to be very, very important. So to now all of a sudden try to play 10 quality opponents, we've always tried to play 9. Now I'm sort of thinking we need to play 10. Without playing one of those games, it would be very difficult for us to do that. And that's one of the other reasons that I support having 9 teams in the conference, because 9 games, 9 conference games, because it's difficult to schedule out of conference games. But we've always enjoyed that. It's been a great experience for our players to be able to play in Dallas and Atlanta and different places, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that in the future.
Coach, we'll go over to the side, all right?
Head Coach Bruce Marshall, Sports Byline USA. Talk a little bit about earlier in your career, some of those coaches who you coached under, played under, Don James and Earl Bruce. How did they impact you, and have you carried stuff through your career that you learned from some of those coaches?
Absolutely. Everything that we do, that I know, I've been fortunate to have great mentors and had the opportunity to learn from them. And even my high school coach had a significant impact on me as a person. Don James especially, he was very successful, that I played for in college and started out as a graduate assistant, probably had the biggest influence on me even getting into coaching, which is something that I was not geared up to do, and he sort of taught me into being a graduate assistant, and I liked it. But Don was very well organized, had great programs for personal development, emphasized all the right things academically, a lot of the same things that we do now, the same kind of recruiting organization that we did then. You know, every coach that I coached with has had a real impact in how to do things and maybe sometimes how not to do things. But George Perlis, who was a great coach at Michigan State and also at Pittsburgh Steelers with Chuck Noll, really taught me a lot about developing as a coach. I'm talking about technique of being a good defensive coordinator and a secondary coach, and was great at how he handled people and treated people. He was a great recruiter, and I learned a lot from him. And Bill Belichick is probably the other person that, from an organizational standpoint in the NFL, in terms of how he runs the program, how he defines the expectation of every part of every person in the organization, probably had as much of an impact as anyone. So I've been very fortunate to have some really good mentors, you know, along the way.
We'll go right down front here and say, Rob.
Yes, Coach Dwayne Rankin, Montgomery Advertiser. With the game against LSU, that's basically become, if not the marquee game during the season. Why do you feel as if you guys play these type of close, dramatic games at the same level of recruiting, coaches just knowing each other? Why do you think that's become that?
Well, I just think that, you know, LSU has, you know, a great program. Les has done a fantastic job there. They've got a really good coaching staff. They do a really good job of developing their players. You know, there's a lot of good players in Louisiana, and they have really good talent on their team. They've done a really good job of getting those guys to play at a high level. It's a very challenging game for us each and every year. They're a physical team. They're a lot like us in terms of style. So, you know, it's like, you know, two heavyweights, you know, going toe to toe. And our expectation is always going to be that that's going to be, you know, one of the most difficult games that we have in our season.
We'll go to the center section. Cecil, about 3/4 of the way back.
Coach, in light of situations such as Aaron Hernandez's situation, how much responsibility does a head coach have in terms of discipline, and how do you make a decision when you have to dismiss a guy like you have to do before players over the pitch?
Well, I think we have a responsibility to create the best atmosphere for the players to have a chance to be successful in, which means that we have to educate our players of the consequences of good and bad behavior and try to create an atmospheric environment where we're going to get them to have the kind of behaviors that's going to enhance their chances of being successful. I think we have a tremendous responsibility to that. I think personal development is something that we've always sort of been in the forefront on in terms of human behavior and how we can get people to make choices and decisions that are going to enhance their chances of being successful. So that's something that we've always tried to do a good job. We have personal development programs, attitude toward mental conditioning for success. We have peer intervention programs for behavioral issues, whether it's drugs, alcohol, agents, gambling, how to treat the opposite sex, macho man stuff, getting into fights. We have leadership seminars, we have public relations seminars, doing everything we can to help our players create value. But the players have to understand that the consequences of bad behavior is going to be something that affects them as much as anyone. So they have to be responsible for that to some degree. And, you know, I mean, any of us that have had adolescents that we've raised, I've had a couple, I know most of you probably had that experience as well. You know, it's a tremendous responsibility to try to get young people that have the right guidance and inspire them to do the right things. And that's something that we've tried to pride ourselves in doing. And I don't think that we're always going to bat 1,000%, you know, when it comes to that. You know, you can be the best professor in the world, and be the best teacher, but someone still may cheat on the test. And you may provide every single bit of guidance, you know, to get the correct behavior and not with your own children, you know, at times. So we can be the moral compass for our young people, but we cannot always drive the ship. We always cannot be there to drive the ship. So we're going to try to provide the best moral experience for our players in terms of their development that we possibly can. And, you know, I think that you have to have a standard of behavior that they understand is the expectation in your organization. And I think they have to understand the consequences if they don't meet that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But in the meantime, we're going to do everything we can to help them develop that behavior. And you know, human behavior is not an exact science, but we're going to do everything we can to try to help every player have success in his life because he makes good choices and decisions in the program.
We have time for just two more. We'll start over here on the right.
Hey, Coach. Steve Moulton, 97.7 The Zone. You mentioned earlier with the impact that Coach Bryant had with his players beyond what they were able to do while he was coaching them. How much interaction do you have with your former players, and specifically Rolando McClain since he's back on the campus?
Well, we have a lot. I talked to Rob a lot. I talked to him a lot when he was going through the process of making the decisions that he made to get back in school and to come back and, you know, work out, you know, as a player who may someday decide that he wants to play. He has his mind in the right, you know, sort of to play football. So, quite a bit. You know, we pride ourselves in the fact that our players come back a lot that have been successful. We even have players who have been unsuccessful and suspended who come back and make an impact on our players when they realize that what they did is not the way to go and they can affect somebody else in a positive way. So I think it's very important. I can't speak for the players themselves, but I always enjoy when the players come back and look for guidance, and most of our players come back to the spring game, A-Day, and that's always good, but I think most of the guys that have played for me know that if they ever need anything, that I'll always be there for them. There's a lot of former players that played for me at LSU that I'll still call and stay in touch.
Okay, we have one final question over on the left.
Jim Dunn from ESPN Radio in Chattanooga. Coach, Chattanooga Moms on your schedule this year. With strength of schedule becoming a component in the future, will you continue to play FCS schools at Alabama?
Well, I think that if we can get 10 quality opponents on our schedule, look, I've said this before, nobody wants to hear this, but I played in the NFL, I was in the NFL for 8 years, where every team you played was in the NFL. So if somebody wants to take the leadership and say, okay, here's the 5 conferences that are the top conferences, and we're going to play all our games amongst those people, I'd be fine with that. But until somebody says that, it's going to be impossible to schedule all your games with those teams. So we will have to continue to play some of those games. Now, do I think that's what the fans want to see? Probably not. Do I think it's a great experience for those players who are going to have the opportunity to play at Alabama this year? It's a great experience for them, and I'm not trying to take that away from them. But I think in the world that we live in, it is impossible to schedule more than 10 games with real quality opponents. Very difficult. And it's very difficult from a financial business standpoint because everybody wants to play more home games, which for business reasons, which means financial reasons. And the more games you play with quality opponents, you're going to have to play home and home, so you're going to have less home games. So there's a lot of issues, involved in all this. And it's not just about what the coach wants to do. It's about the business of college football. So I don't feel responsible to have to make that decision. So I don't really feel comfortable answering that question.
And Coach, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. And I would like to say that we really appreciate what you do as media to create the interest that you create in our game and the self-gratification and recognition that you give our players in what you do and recognizing their positive performance. And we really do appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach. Alabama.